All right, we should be live. We should be live. Clash of Cultures, episode 22, week 12 game previews. Talk about the Heisman, talk about the college football playoff race, any big news. Wait for a few of you guys to get in here.
Yeah.
Obviously,
See,
trying to
we
get
should
back
do
into the
like
swing of things and stuff. But what you say?
we should do like a countdown first.
We tried that in the first one though, and it's too hard to kind of maintain.
Oh,
It's hard to maintain a countdown because you have to have like different apps and stuff for it, and it was just too much.
oh.
So those of you guys who are just now kind of trickling in here,
What's up, Dane?
We're not going to be going over every top 25 game this week, just kind of openly talking about college football as we kind of end towards the end of the season or head towards the end of the season.
My first thought is, it to me, and I don't know if it feels like this to you, but it's crazy that we're already in week 12. Like this season seems like it's gone by so fast.
Well, not for me because I've been off work the whole time. So like for me, it went by super fast. Yeah. And I got to go back to work in a week. But it's crazy.
Yes, sir. Get that ass back to work.
It's crazy though, because I realized because I had the entire season off pretty much, I go back to work on Black Friday, but then I have Saturday, Sunday off. I think this is the first time since I was in high school that I've watched every Clemson game in a season. Obviously, the bowl game's not going to count, so I don't know if I'll have the day off, but every regular season game.
How do you watch every Clemson game? Because I know, I mean, obviously, I know I have where I can see every game, but how do you watch them?
I mean, I have Spectrum, so it's on every. We never had a game that wasn't on a main network this year.
Like or ACC network or something.
Yeah, and I get ACC network. So
okay.
How did you have 3 months off? I had a newborn, and Washington. I live in Washington.
Right.
They give you
if you ever have a kid, move to Washington. Them motherfuckers give everybody time off.
No, but you have to like meet a bunch of criteria. You can't just move here and get it.
What's the criteria? Because you don't know what criteria you meet.
You have to work 900 hours, and you have to work it within like a 10-month period or something. You're like where you work has to have more than 50 employees within a 20-mile radius. And then you have to have.
Was there anything you almost didn't meet?
The 50 employees.
Really?
Yeah. Because I thought it would just go back like based off of my like department. Mm-hmm. But because I work for Spectrum, obviously it's like the entire like anything that's Spectrum, like technicians, anything.
So that helped. That gave you over 50.
Yeah. So that kind of worked out. But yeah, I go back to work in a week.
Yes, sir.
But I mean the good thing is though, I like lined it up perfectly because I'll get like another 22 days or whatever of vacation as soon as January 1st hits. So I could just, if I wanted to, just get right back on vacation. But I'm gonna save it.
You want to go to that Drake J. Cole concert?
No.
You being a whole bitch right now.
That is crazy. That is we've been in here for 3 minutes. That is crazy. Bruh.
What do you mean no?
Ask Darren.
What?
If I can fly across the country to go to a Drake concert. You know how much slack I got for leaving for 3 days to go to that Clemson game? I came back and boy, you would have thought I murdered somebody. I was gone for 3 days and she acted like I went to Iraq. She acted like I was on deployment.
Hey, I'm not messing with my daughter-in-law. She don't want you to go. You can't go. I don't.
And it's probably gonna be hella expensive anyway, so I don't really have the money for it. Did you get the tickets already?
No, I just seen the dates. But I'm definitely going. I mean, they got a little spot in Tampa. They got kind of weird locations for this concert. Like Columbus.
It was like a surprise announcement.
And then like J. Cole's not going to some locations, but they're not going to LA. It looks like I think they're not going to New York.
Nowhere on the West Coast. The farthest on the West Coast is like Denver, I think. Nowhere like actually on the West Coast, which is surprising. They're not going to like a San Francisco. LA is the most surprising.
We can bus to Denver, and then we both got to travel.
I'm not going. I'm good, bro. I'm all right. Like I'm chilling.
You want to go?
Let's go ahead and save up that money. And we'll meet Duck Van Dane over at that Ohio State game next year. Let's do that.
That's what's up. I like that.
Because I know Duck Van Dane's gonna be tuned into that one. Hopefully he goes to that game.
Yeah,
playing for that one though. Ohio State at Oregon. But just to kind of get started into talking about this week of college football. Obviously, some good matchups. Some of the matchups that I'm not looking forward to: Alabama, Chattanooga. Obviously, I'm not going to watch that one. I won't be watching Ole Miss, UM Monroe. I won't be watching Tulane, FAU. Any other big Florida State, North Alabama is not going to be a good one. And then LSU, Georgia State. But there's a lot of good games as well. Obviously, we have Louisville, Miami. If Louisville wins that game, they've locked themselves into the ACC title game, or with the North Carolina loss at Clemson. So both of those games are going to be interesting to tune into because that's ACC title implications in both of those games. Then you have Utah, Arizona, which should be a good game. Obviously, both quarterbacks I think are out. Obviously, Cam Rising, I don't think Delora is going to come back this year. He's been out for like 5 straight weeks.
But the quarterback in Arizona, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, he's been playing. Yeah,
Fafita's been playing well. You have Georgia, Tennessee, which I think is going to be a sleeper pick for upset of the week. I do like Tennessee in that game a lot at home. Obviously,
wait a minute. You're saying you would pick Tennessee?
I'm picking Tennessee to win this week. Yeah.
Now I picked it early in the season, but Tennessee has not looked great.
I know.
They really disappointed me.
I do agree, but I also think that Georgia has looked kind of lackluster in a lot of their first halves this year. And I think of everybody they've played so far outside of Missouri, Tennessee is probably the last team that you want to start slow against because I think Tennessee still has the weapons to keep up with Georgia. And I don't think it'd be the end of the world. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee won this game, especially because I don't think we've seen like the powerhouse Georgia outside of the Ole Miss game. I think outside of the Ole Miss game. But I want to see Tennessee win this game because I think it could cause chaos for the playoff. I think if Tennessee wins this game, then they're obviously going to be a one-loss Georgia going against a one-loss Alabama, and then if Alabama wins, there could be a scenario where there's no SEC team in the playoffs, which we'll talk about in a little while. But
that'd be crazy.
Wouldn't be surprised at that. Raymond said Oregon Ducks would beat Arizona State 49-3 because Dellinger was an offensive coordinator for Oregon immediately before coming to Arizona State head coach, and that's the score that Georgia beat the Ducks by. Wasn't that last year?
Yeah,
that was last year. But Raymond, how do you feel about this Oregon versus Oregon State matchup at the end of the year? Do you feel like that's going to be a trap game for you guys, or do you feel pretty confident? Obviously, Oregon State beat you guys last year without Bo Nix, but how do you feel about it this year? And Dad, how do you feel about the Washington-Oregon State game this year or this week?
Obviously, I'm picking Washington, but as we kind of talked about last week, this is one of those games in Washington State. Washington State is one of those teams that I wouldn't be shocked no matter who they beat. Like, there's nobody if they beat them that I'd be like, oh, that's crazy. And I can say that about a bunch of Pac-12 teams. What are you drinking?
What you think, man? I'm drinking that good.
Where you get that
from? Store over here.
Oh, they don't have them over here.
Yes, they do. You just got to go to the right places.
Oh, okay. But so yeah, I think Washington State. Oregon State can beat them. But I'm going to pick Washington. Washington hasn't looked great of late. But I think they need a very good win, and they seem to continue to find a way.
So just by looking, Doug Van Day said, I can't pick Tennessee after they lost to Florida. Just by looking at the slate of games, I think there's going to be a lot of upsets this week. I'm picking Clemson to beat North Carolina. I don't know if that's a big upset.
I would pick that too. Especially at Clemson, I don't call that an upset.
Yeah, they are at home. But just based off the ranking, I think that's going to be an upset. They are a 7.5-point favorite, which is kind of surprising.
Hold on. Let me move in so everybody can see my shirt.
You have issues. And then you have Louisville, Miami. I do think Miami's going to pull this game off at home against Louisville. I know I've been very high on Louisville. But I also
Louisville's number one fan.
But I also think Miami's a really good team as well. I think at home, that can play a major factor in this game. But I think even though Louisville loses this game to Miami, I think Clemson's going to beat North Carolina, so Louisville's still going to get a spot in the ACC title game. And they can have a chance to spoil it for Florida State, spoil their undefeated season. I also think that the Utah-Arizona game, technically Utah's an underdog against Arizona. I think that game could be an upset. I think Tennessee, like I just said.
So as you say this, I don't think Utah beating Arizona is just like I would say, and let me look at the line on this. I'm going to go back to Clemson.
Arizona's a 1-point favorite.
Let me go back to the Clemson-UNC game. Is Clemson not a favorite in that? Yeah, Clemson.
7.5 points.
Yeah, so I don't think that's obviously, I don't think Clemson's the underdog. I think Clemson should win that game. So picking Clemson, I think, is picking the favorite. I'm shocked though by that Utah, that the fact Arizona would be the favorite over Utah. That's crazy to me. Utah is a very disrespected team. And again, we got to remember that I think they kind of overachieved this year when you consider that they played this entire season without Cam Rising. And they're no easy out, and I think they're better than Utah.
What do you think is going to be the game of the week?
I say Utah, but I meant Arizona. I mean, the easy say is I think you got to go Georgia, Tennessee. But I think the closest game in terms of just excitement, I think it's going to be that Washington Oregon State game. That's the game I really want to see. I think, like I said, that Washington offense has seemed to kind of hit a lull a little bit after starting the season so explosive. And Oregon State is a team that can beat them. It's almost a top 10 game. Oregon State's right there at 11. And this game is at Oregon State. So yeah, that's the game I am most looking forward to watching this weekend.
So I kind of want to have this conversation, the same one that we had in the video the other day about the college football playoff and kind of the chaos that can happen. And obviously, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the people here watch that video. If not, go check it out, guys. But we're just gonna have an open dialogue about it. So obviously the rankings came out a few days ago. Let me pull it up on my phone.
They did my boy. They moved my boys back one.
1 second. If I can find it.
So I know it's Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State, Washington, Oregon as the top 6.
Yes.
They're closely now. I don't remember it. Ben, do you have it up now?
I do.
Okay.
So here's what I'll do. I'm going to save the picture and I'll just email it to myself right now. Yeah. So it's going to take me a few seconds, guys, but just give me a second.
Yeah. I know Texas is in the hunt. Alabama's in the hunt. So you have a bunch, another group of good teams right there. And let me say, okay, looking at it, and we'll talk more about it when you pull it up. But where right now do you think the line is of these teams have a chance? Like I said, Texas, Alabama have a legitimate chance. Where do you think that line is now?
I think there's realistically 10 or 11 teams. That might sound crazy because I know number 10 is Oregon State, but we talked about it in the video. Sorry, I can't see you right now. I'm pulling up my email, but we talked about it in the video.
I think we had a path that Oregon State could end up it will cause chaos, but if they were able to beat Washington and Oregon and Washington again, I think they legitimately have a shot. Because again, if they do that, they're in, I think. But I think if you asked me to bet any amount of money, I would bet that they are not able to win all 3 of those games if they're able to win even 2 of those 3, because obviously the Pac-12 championship game only happens if they win, if they beat Washington and Oregon.
Yeah. Okay. 1 second. I'm pulling it up right now.
So you go 11 deep. See, I'm gonna probably cut it before, because I think so much chaos would have to happen for Oregon State to be able to do it. If I went realistic, I'm gonna go to 8. I think Alabama's 8, and I think the 4 teams that make the playoffs are going to, because when you get to Missouri, I don't see Missouri getting in. So I think the 4 teams that make the playoffs will be from the top 8.
Okay. Hopefully everybody can see that correctly. I know I did that kind of quick, so hopefully everybody can see it.
I stop at Missouri, and I say the 4 teams that get in are either going to be Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State, Washington, Oregon, Texas, Alabama. I don't think a team outside of the top 8 will get in.
So I'm gonna say 10 teams, and I'm gonna remove Mizzou. So I would put. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I'm gonna make the argument. Let's talk. So if I said secure spots, the Ohio State Michigan winner is getting in. If I'm looking at this and I assume that Georgia does beat Tennessee, which that's a bad assumption, but I think if Georgia beats Tennessee, then some SEC team is going to get in. Whoever wins,
not necessarily.
Not necessarily, but they're going to have a better chance than anybody past 8.
So wait. Let me ask you this though. So Ohio State or Michigan get in? We'll just say Ohio State gets in. Boom. Yeah. They're number 1.
Yeah.
Let's say Georgia does run the table and then loses to Alabama. Then I think Alabama gets in or Georgia gets in. So one of those 2 will get in. But you also have to look at Texas because Texas has the head-to-head win over Alabama.
Right.
And also, so if Florida State runs the table, they're obviously in. But I think a lot of people are not giving Louisville credit. And I know I just
this
said
this is what I'm going to say. And this is, I think name notoriety in the playoffs means something. And I'm saying this to say that I think if Georgia loses to Alabama in the SEC championship, Georgia will get in over Louisville, even if Louisville beats Florida State in the ACC championship. I believe that 100%.
Well, the only problem with that would be Georgia would have how many top 25 wins? They'd only have one.
Yeah, but it's still, I think, name notoriety.
They would have two.
I think name notoriety is going to matter. And I don't, and again, because what you're talking about at that point in time is Georgia's one loss is a top 25, a top 4 loss. I think now, obviously, we'll see how it plays out. And these things seem to have a way of working themselves out. But I think Georgia would get in over Louisville, even if they lost to Alabama. Because everybody below that.
I also think about, so Louisville is at 10 right now. Mm-hmm. So hypothetically, if they were to finish the season 11-1, they should be at least at 8 or 9, at least 9 at the minimum. Because unless Oregon beats Washington, but I think if Washington beats Oregon again, then I think Louisville is above Oregon at that point, at least at 9. And then you're going to have if they were to beat Florida State, you'd have a top 3 win in Florida State, and that's not including anything else that happens.
So they probably jump Missouri for sure. So that will put them probably at 8. They're probably not going to jump. And again, there's 2 teams that, and I'm talking name notoriety. You're talking about Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State, Michigan, where both of those teams would be putting their resume against Louisville's with the name notoriety.
Yeah, but I think that matters. I think Louisville's resume would be better than Michigan State's or Michigan's though. Especially if they lost to Ohio State.
Well, and I think they both would get left out.
Who?
Unless that's what I think in a case where, and again, mind you, I think the scenario in which Louisville makes the playoffs, like a bunch of teams would have to lose, and some of those games would have to be bad.
Well, so when you say like a bunch of teams have to lose, who are you talking about? Because I don't think Mizzou has to lose.
I think I'm not worried about Mizzou because I think they jump Mizzou if they beat Florida State. I think for Louisville to get in, they need Georgia to beat Alabama to knock Alabama out. They need Texas to lose in the Big 12 championship. They really probably need Washington State to beat Oregon, and then they need that Ohio State Michigan game. That's still I don't have a path for them to get in.
I think if Ohio State were to beat Michigan and Michigan is 11-1 and Louisville is 12-1, I don't think that they would put Michigan in over Louisville because their only good win is Penn State.
Michigan is the one team that I don't think they have the resume that
because Michigan would have a top 15 win in Penn State, maybe top 10ish around that time, and Louisville's going to have a top 5 win in Florida State, a top 20 win in Notre Dame. And I don't know what Duke's record is now, but they beat Duke as well. So they would have 2 top 25 wins, and one of them being a top 5 win. Obviously, they have the Pitt loss, which is a bad loss. But they're obviously not punishing them that much if they're a top 10 team. And this is not
really you got to say they are because when you look at this,
well, they also don't have the resume of anybody else that's on here.
But they are outside of Oregon State. They're the lowest ranked 1-loss team right now on this board. And not include Tulane.
But so they're the lowest ranked, but I think they have the worst resume. Even if we say don't even count any of the losses, just count the wins, they don't have the best win of anybody above them.
No, they don't have the best one. And that's okay.
I mean, Texas beat Alabama, beat Ole Miss, Washington beat Oregon, and then obviously everybody at the top is undefeated, so we can't even count them. Right. I think Oregon is the only one that's above Louisville that doesn't have a better win than them.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we'll see how it plays out.
I mean, I think it'll be interesting. I don't think Louisville is going to beat Florida State, but I think it's the same thing as I said with Oregon State. I think if Oregon State manages to beat number 5 this week, and then Oregon would move to number 5, and they beat Oregon again, I would be very upset if Oregon State isn't in the top 6 or 7, with 2 losses.
Now, I think because of the way the schedule plays out, and again, I don't think it's going to happen, but I think if Oregon State can beat Washington, Oregon, and then Washington again, I think that is a ridiculous resume. And again, obviously, depending upon how some other things shake, I think they have a great resume to get in. I think they jump a bunch of teams if they're able to do that. The problem is, I don't think they're going to start by beating both Washington and Oregon.
What I think would be like the lamest way to end the year, and it could just be coming from like a person whose team is 6-4. And I know if my team was undefeated right now, Edgar said DJ really changed the culture out there for Oregon State. I don't think he changed the culture.
Oregon State was pretty good last year. Where they were 10-3 last year.
Yeah, they were 10-3 last year. They were already good, but I think the lamest thing that can happen is if Georgia, Florida State, Washington, and then Ohio State or Michigan can just go undefeated, because then the committee doesn't have to do anything. They literally just take the 4
undefeated teams. You want there to be some drama.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously a Clemson fan now. My team has nothing to do with this. So I would love to see Oregon State beat Washington and Oregon. I would love to see Louisville knock off Florida State. I would love to see Ohio State and Michigan lose to Iowa in the Big Ten. I want to see everything. I would love to see Georgia lose to Tennessee. I just want a bunch of crazy stuff to happen.
Well, you like the Joker, boy. I just want to see the world burn.
But realistically, I think Florida State is going to win out. Obviously, Ohio State, Michigan are going to win out. So I think at minimum, we're going to have at least 2 undefeated teams in the playoffs. But I think realistically, Washington could win out as well. I think Georgia can win out as well. So I think there's a higher chance that everyone wins out than there are of a bunch of chaos happening, because we're for sure going to get 1 undefeated team. And I think Florida State is pretty much a lock as well. Obviously, I have them losing to Florida at the end of the year. Florida has looked very shaky. Florida does play who do they play this week? LSU? Or no, they play Mizzou this week. So yeah. Florida does play Mizzou. So they still have a kind of a chance to kind of make some noise. So hopefully that game is decent. But I just want to see mayhem, like I said.
And that's why I said, to me, if you believe Florida State runs the table, the Ohio State-Michigan winner gets in. And I think if you really, to me, I think the SEC is going to lock up a spot because Alabama's playing nobody this week. They play Auburn, a bad Auburn team next week. And then obviously they play Georgia. The only way chaos ensues in the SEC is if Tennessee beats Georgia this week. Because beyond that, I think if Georgia beats Tennessee, I think the SEC has the spot locked up.
I don't think so. The only reason why is because if Georgia beats Tennessee and they're undefeated, then Alabama beats Georgia, and then I'm
telling you, if Alabama beats Georgia, Alabama's getting in.
Over Texas.
Oh, I would not be surprised if it's over Texas.
But so if they did that, then all of the credibility for the committee would be out the window. Because at the end of the day, they both have the same exact record. They both be Big 12 and SEC champions, and one would have a 10-point win on the road at that team.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
It would be very hard for them to take an Alabama team over Texas when Texas literally beat them at their house by 10.
No,
I get that Alabama would have the quote unquote best win, being the number 1 team or number 2 team, but Texas has the head-to-head win over that specific team.
No, that's
so I think the only way the SEC is guaranteed someone is if Georgia wins out, or if Florida State loses, or if Texas loses again. And I feel like that's a lot to ask for, because I think if Alabama wins the SEC, they kind of shot themselves. I don't think
it's a lot to ask for. Texas is right now possibly going to play the team that beat them again.
Yeah, but I'm saying for Florida State though as well. You would need Florida State to lose for you to feel comfortable if Georgia had 1 loss and Alabama had 1 loss. Because I think even if we haven't even talked about Washington, so if Washington run the table, they're going to be in. I think.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I mean, you already look at Oregon. Oregon has the same record as Alabama, and they already favor them over Alabama. And Oregon's going to play Washington again.
I think the only reason I'm saying that, I think they put so much stock in a Georgia win that, but you're right. It would be very hard for them to move them past Texas when Texas came to your house and beat you by 10. I agree with that.
So I mean, like I said, I just hope that a lot of stuff happens. But just to kind of move away from a little bit of the playoff talk, I kind of want to talk about the Heisman race. I've been seeing so much talk about Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman, and I get it. But I think if he is in discussion for the Heisman, then I think Caleb Williams has to be in discussion for the Heisman, and I don't think either of them should be in discussion for the Heisman. I get they brought up RG3, they brought up Johnny Manziel, they brought up Lamar, how they weren't on top 5, top 6 teams. But I just think there's so many good players this year. Jaden Daniels wasn't like RG3 or Lamar, where he is far better than everyone else. Like people are like saying like he's the best player in college football and it's not close. Like I don't see that. Like I just simply don't see it. When Lamar won it, he was literally doing everything. He almost beat a national championship team in Clemson by himself.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's the same argument for Jaden Daniels.
I mean, Jaden Daniels just had one of the most ridiculous games I've ever seen, and I got to give him props for that. Jaden Daniels is like third in passing in the nation and about 80 yards from being a 1,000-yard rusher as well. I mean, I think he is putting up a historic year. So, and I'd have to go back and look at RG3 and Lamar's numbers, but I would bet that Jaden Daniels' numbers are probably right on par with, if not better than Lamar's numbers.
It's not close.
What are Lamar's final numbers in his Heisman year? Do you have
them? So I'm gonna read you Jaden Daniels first. Obviously, he still has 2 more games left.
Yeah. You're talking about
3 more games,
possibly 3. Yeah.
So Jaden Daniels right now has 3,100 yards, 30 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and then rushing is at 908. So he's at about 4,000 total yards and 38 total touchdowns and 4 picks.
Right.
So Lamar, so he's at 4,000 yards, 38 touchdowns, 4 picks. Lamar was at 3,500 yards passing, 30 touchdowns, and he ran for 1,500 yards and 21 touchdowns.
So a big.
So he had 51 touchdowns, and he had 5,000 total yards.
But so you're talking about 50 touchdowns, right? Jaden Daniels.
He would need to average
3 more games.
He would need to average 400 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah,
that's what he would need to average.
And I think that's very possible.
I agree.
This is a guy who just almost had a 600-yard game. He may have had a 600-yard game.
I think he did, but I agree. I think he can get close to those numbers, but I also think it comes down to how Lamar did it, because I don't think so. Jaden Daniels is on a team that is stacked. Lamar Jackson was not on a team that was stacked.
No, and I agree.
That Louisville team was far inferior to everybody that he was putting. Like that Clemson team was way better than Louisville, but they had the best player in college football. So the game was a 4-point game or whatever it was, 3-point game. I think going into this season, I think me and you both said LSU's roster is probably better than anybody's roster. They had the most 5 stars and 4 stars.
Yeah, no, that's
so he has the most help. So I don't think
he had more help than Lamar. I will give you that 100%.
Yeah, guinea pigs are the same thing. I mean, he played for Louisville, but I also think even when you look at Johnny Manziel, like it's just the way Johnny did it, like his stature.
Well,
obviously.
I think the thing for Johnny was he had the and he had a big moment. He's a guy who beat Alabama literally in a 400-yard game or something like that.
Yeah, and so that was like in Alabama's prime.
But do you call a 600-yard game on par with that? A guy who threw for 300 and ran for over 200, threw for almost 400 and ran for 200.
That game was definitely good.
That's one of the most ridiculous games I've seen by a single player.
So
now it's not the biggest moment, right? This doesn't match the Johnny Manziel moment. It doesn't match the Vince Young versus USC moment. But that's as dominant as I've seen one single player in a college football game against, and we're not talking about fucking, the team that you're talking about Florida, a blue blood college football team, and this guy went for 600 yards. And like I said, I watched that game, and that was nasty.
Well, I think the problem with Jaden Daniels ended up being he has 2 losses that were ugly. They were blowouts, obviously to Florida State.
But the thing is, when you look at both of those games, it's kind of the Lamar thing. Those weren't his faults. He didn't have bad games. Now he didn't have great games, but he didn't have bad games.
Yeah, I don't think Lamar got blown out at any point. And I think even in the games that he lost, like against the Clemson, I think he had like 500 or 600 yards in that game.
So look, you take the FSU game, 346 yards passing, 64 yards rushing. The Ole Miss game, 414 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 100 yards rushing. The Alabama game. Now, the Alabama game wasn't great. 219 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, but 163 yards rushing. That's not his fault. The problem with LSU is the defense. It's not anything Jaden Daniels or the offense is doing.
Yeah. I just think that would be the reason why he doesn't win it. Is
now, yeah, I think the losses. Yeah,
and I think if he had one win that was like if he would have beaten Alabama or would have beat Florida State, then I think it would be a different discussion. But I think the two games that really matter, two of the teams that are in playoff discussions, you lost by 3 touchdowns to.
No, that's a valid point.
And I think when you look at the Lamar, I haven't looked at Johnny Manziel or RG3, but when you look at Lamar against that national championship Clemson team, he had 300 yards passing and a touchdown and 160 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns, losing by 6 to probably the most stacked team in college football, if not number 2 behind Alabama and Clemson. So, like I said, I haven't looked at Johnny Manziel's stats or RG3's.
No, the big win and a big moment is, and Lamar had the big Clemson win. So I think that is what he's missing, that moment where against a top team where he wins the game. So I'll give you that. And so then who do you have in your top spot right now then?
It's tough. Well, just to kind of talk about Jane Daniels, I know we just had like the Jane Daniels debate, but like when you look at him compared to Caleb Williams, he has far more yards than him rushing, but touchdown wise, Caleb Williams has more. They have the same record. So I just think if we're putting Jaden Daniels up at this upper echelon, I think if Caleb Williams won the Heisman last year, we'd be talking about him in the same.
I seen somebody rank the top 10 Heisman candidates, and Caleb Williams' name wasn't in the top 10.
Yeah,
I was a little shocked by that.
That was like 3 weeks ago, though. So he's been out of the discussion, I think, ever since they lost.
Yeah, nobody is talking about him. And again, kind of as you mentioned, like USC problem are not Caleb Williams' problem. Caleb Williams is balling. USC's problem is the defense, and I think we all know that. But I think Caleb Williams' issue, and the reason he's not, again, I think that second Heisman bias was the part that he was going to have to overcome. So he's overcoming 2 things. You got the losses, and you got the fact that you just won the Heisman.
Yeah. My top player, I mean, it's got to be a quarterback. I know you obviously Kate for Marvin Harrison. I don't think he's in the running.
Kate for Marvin Harrison?
I mean, I don't think he's in the running. I think there's too many good quarterbacks. Caleb has had a horrible game though.
I agree with that. That Notre Dame
he did have a bad against Notre Dame because when you have a game like that, it knocks you out of contention.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
I would say Bo Nix definitely has to be on my top 3. I think he's had a really good year. I would say my top 3 right now are probably Nix, Penix, and probably Jordan Travis.
I feel like Jordan Travis doesn't get a lot of love, especially to be a quarterback on a undefeated team.
Let me look at his numbers. He doesn't really have the numbers. That's why.
So in that, I would say literally probably the same. Problem is Penix is, but if I'm going stock, I think Penix is on his way down. I think Penix had this all but wrapped up, but he's had some bad games. So if I went with those top 3, which I can agree with, at 4, I got my boy Maserati Marvin Harrison at number 4.
I don't understand how you can have him that high when there's other players who have better stats than him.
So the part where because I think what he means to the team, right? And I know we can talk Malik Neighbors, and Malik Neighbors is having an amazing season. But I think Marvin Harrison doesn't have the numbers of Malik Neighbors, but I think he means more to an undefeated team than Malik Neighbors means to LSU and LSU's offense. LSU has players around him. There are points in time where Marvin Harrison has literally been the Ohio State offense, right? Especially when you talk about, and the problem is when you talk about Malik Neighbors, we're also talking about Daniels playing, a top quarterback year in college football. We are not talking about Kyle McCord in that way. Marvin Harrison, especially when you talk about the injuries to Mbuka, the injuries to Henderson, there are points in time where he is literally taking games over and been the entire Ohio State offense for a team that's number 2 in the nation.
And I think, obviously, it's too late now, but I think Jalen Milroe should be creeping in that top 10. Obviously, if you're going to talk about...
The problem with Milroe is you're talking about a guy who was benched for a game because he played so bad.
But, okay,
now,
so...
He has come
wait.
on.
But if you look at that, So we just said that. Well, you just said that even though Marvin Harrison doesn't have the most receiving yards or stats, whatever, he means the most to that team, and that's an undefeated team, playoff team. I think if you look at Milroe, they benched him. They played against USF, and they almost lost to USF. We've never seen Alabama team struggle that much against a group of five.
Yeah, but they were playing. They played horrible the week before, and I can't remember who it was. But they played horrible the week before. No. There was a game between. There was a game between that because or maybe the game before the Texas week where he looked. There was a game besides the Texas game where he looked really bad.
The first game of the year was Middle Tennessee State, and he had like 4 touchdowns in that game, if I'm not mistaken. Then they played Texas. Then they played USF. He was benched after the Texas game. I'm looking at the schedule right now.
He was benched for okay.
So if you look at ever since he came back into the lineup, he's looked phenomenal. I mean, if you look at last week's game, it's kind of getting outshined by Jaden Daniels, I'm sorry, not last week's game. I think it was the game before that. It might have been against LSU. But I know against LSU, he ran for 4 touchdowns against LSU. Against Kentucky, I think he threw for 3 and ran for 3. Yeah, so he threw for 3 against Kentucky, ran for 3 against Kentucky, and then he ran for 4 against LSU. So I think when you look at a guy who is just as meaningful to a team, I think he has to be in the conversation. Now, he doesn't have the numbers.
I was about to say, his numbers, you're talking about a guy has less passing yards than Kyle McCord, 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions.
Yeah, but he has 12 touchdowns rushing, though.
Let me say this. I think Milroe right now, and this is obviously very early, is my early Heisman favorite for next year. I feel like that's tough
to say because there's going to be a lot of good quarterbacks next year.
No, but I like the way he came on. Now, let me say this. Obviously,
you have McCord, obviously.
Well, but if you're asking me my favorite, because I think the way he's come on has been very impressive, but he's had some very bad weeks. And I think as Alabama started to figure out how to play with him and yada yada yada, I think since he came back in, he's been as impressive as any quarterback in college football, but he's had some bad weeks.
Yeah. I'm excited to see him next year, obviously. Yeah. Guinea Pig said his favorite would be Carson Beck if he comes back next year. I think
Beck is going to leave. Beck's a redshirt junior. Yeah. He's been in college 4 years.
You think he's going to get drafted?
Yeah, I'm sure he will get drafted. I don't think he's going high no matter what because I don't think Georgia's the type of team that's ever going to just air it out. So if you're going to get drafted in the 3rd round this year, I don't think he's going to, with that Georgia team right now, I don't think he's going to. Georgia's bringing back great backs next year.
Wait. And matter of fact, if he came back, he probably wouldn't even win the starting job, now that I'm thinking about it, because they got Raiola coming in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he'd have to compete with him.
Yeah, so if I'm Beck, I'm probably leaving. If I get drafted 3rd or 4th round, cool. But I don't think your stock is going to improve much by coming back to Georgia. Yeah.
But I mean, is there any other games you're kind of looking forward to before we wrap this up for this weekend? We do plan on doing live Sunday, but
this is I call this week almost the calm before the storm. Obviously, we got a couple good games, but we got rivalry week next week. And some of those rivalry games are a little bit down, right? The Auburn Alabama game probably doesn't have the same notoriety.
Clemson, South Carolina.
Yeah, Clemson, South Carolina, but you still got the Civil War, the Apple Cup. You still, obviously you got the game, and, I'm sure we will talk a lot about that. So I think this week, when you look at the Alabama schedule and they're playing Chattanooga, this is almost like the second SEC bye week.
Not really. Well, because there are some good games still.
Yeah, you got the Georgia-Tennessee game.
You have Georgia-Tennessee, and you have Florida-Mizzou.
Yeah, you had Georgia-Tennessee. And let me say, even that Florida-Mizzou game, but let me say, I think as the SEC schedule makers made that game, they didn't expect it to even, I don't think anybody expected Mizzou to be in the hunt this late. Now, good fortune it is, they are, but not to say this is a bad week of college football. I think, though, when you just look at what's coming next week, rivalry week, end of the season, and again, what I suspect in terms of hype, maybe not in terms of the game, but in terms of hype, what's going to probably be the most hyped game of the year. This is kind of a week where it's just a lot of teams are probably just like, let's survive.
Yeah, I can see that as well.
Wait, we got to talk about this though, because this has been the big college football topic.
Obviously, talk about Michigan, bro.
No. Well, and we can talk about that too. Obviously, Jimbo got fired at Texas A&M. Any thoughts on who you think may take that Texas A&M job?
For starters, if I'm Jimbo, I go get up in the studio somewhere and chill. Like you have nothing. You have nothing to prove. You're getting paid $78 million.
$8 million to not.
Yeah, like why don't you should just go sit up somewhere, go watch football, go enjoy your life at this point.
And I don't know the details of his contract, so you may know this.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't, but I know like if he goes and gets a job, does he get that money? So I mean, there's not many jobs
because Pride may say, let me prove that I'm still a good coach.
I mean, when you're at Texas A&M, for one, you're not upgrading. So where are you going to prove that you're a good coach?
So what? And I hate to get into rumors, but Texas A&M in terms of booster support is one of the richest teams in college football.
Yeah. So where does he go now?
No, not Jim. Oh, you're talking about Jimbo. I thought.
Yeah, I'm saying like so. No. I'm not saying who replaces it. I'm saying if I'm Jimbo, you said like he should if he had pride, he should go like prove himself. But when you're at Texas A&M, that's arguably a top 5 job in college football.
You know where I probably go if I'm Jimbo? To not a top 5 job, but almost like a rebuilding situation where there's much less pressure. Like if you could go to and I'm throwing these out there, but maybe some middle of the road, like an Arizona State or a Michigan State might be a good spot. Someplace where there's not going to be championship pressure, but you have the opportunity to build that team.
But the problem is, if he goes and does that, and he starts losing more, even though that organization or that program's expectation isn't to compete, Jimbo's is. So if Jimbo goes to Arizona State or USF or whatever, and is going 7-5 or 6-6, at the end of the day, at the end of his coaching career, you're going to see that on his coaching resume, which is not going to be the same thing as Florida State. So I think he's just right off into the sunset. You're getting $78 million a year. I don't think any other
he's not getting $78 million a year.
I'm sorry, $78 million total over the next 7 years or however long it is. Yeah. No other school is going to pay you that, first off, because you just proved that you couldn't do it at Texas A&M. Yeah, so I don't think any school is going to pay you to do that. And I don't think any job is going to pay you $78 million. So why not just not work and just chill? Like Doug Van Dane said, go work on ESPN. Obviously, if that doesn't interfere with the money he's making. I said,
I think the biggest thing is does taking another job. Because again, let me tell you, if taking another job interferes with the $78 million, then sit at home or whatever. Whether that ESPN.
When it comes to Texas A&M, though, there's obviously a plethora of people that could take that job. Yes. I don't know who I would say takes it because it's so early. I mean, the year hasn't ended yet. I'm sure there's going to be coaches in the NFL that get fired. So if I had to bet, it's probably going to be another big name, person.
But because they're backing a truck up for somebody.
Yeah, it's just hard to say like, oh, it's going to be, I don't know, some random.
I think there's a couple names you can throw out. I don't think it'll be Dion. I think that's been talked about. If I'm Texas A&M right now, no knock to Dion. But I think if I'm a big school, Dion has to prove a little bit more to me, right? I need to see the Colorado turnaround versus the discussion of the Colorado turnaround. And some of the big names, I know Ryan Day has been thrown. I think Dabo's been thrown in there. I think Lane Kiffin's been thrown in there. I don't see any of them leaving. Ooh.
I've heard Dan Campbell's name.
Yeah, Dan Campbell is literally a Super Bowl front runner. Why would I leave the Lions? I'm saying he's in the Lions are in the talk. Like I'm not saying
Super Bowl front runner. It was a crazy statement, bro.
Well, they're one of the best teams in the NFC this year.
They're not no damn Super Bowl front runner.
They probably have the second best record in the NFC right now. I am almost certain of that.
Yeah, but I wouldn't favor them over a lot of teams in the NFC.
But could they beat if I'm second, possibly playing for first?
Okay, wait. Let me ask you this then. So you said there. Who else? How many Super Bowl front runners are there?
So if I name front runner, if I name teams that I think that legitimately if I had to narrow the teams down that I think are going to win the Super Bowl this year, I'm going to say Kansas City, Miami. Let me throw Detroit in there, Philly, San Francisco.
So that's 5.
That's probably about it.
You don't maybe the Ravens in there?
I throw no, I don't think the Bills are going to win. I'll throw the Ravens in there.
I think the Bills have a better chance of winning the Super Bowl than the Lions do.
Yo, you Allen.
Are you serious?
The same Bills team that just lost to the Broncos?
Yes, the Kansas City lost to the Broncos. You just named Kansas City.
Yeah, I can't throw the Bills in there.
What are we saying right now, bro?
I can't throw the Bills in there.
That's crazy. Detroit is definitely a contender. They're a contender to make the playoffs. They're not a Super Bowl front runner.
Well, they're making the playoffs.
They're not a Super Bowl front runner is what I'm saying. I have no problem with saying they're a playoff team.
They're literally
what is their record? 7-2?
7-2. They have the second best record in the NFC.
But a front runner, you can't name 8 front runners. That wouldn't mean they're a front runner.
I just named 6. I said 6.
Okay, so even 6.
So you're saying 6? If I said these, I guarantee I am almost certain.
I think front runners, but I think front run you can't name. That's how many. What's the percentage of that? That's like 20, almost 20% of the league.
That's 3 teams per conference.
That's 20% of the league. You're saying is a front runner. That's not really a front runner.
What?
Because 8 of 32 is 25%. So 6 has to be right around 20% of the league. That's what I'm saying. You can't say 20% of the league are front runners.
So how many do you want me to cut it down to?
It's got to be like 2 or 3. That's what a front runner is.
Okay, if I went 2 or 3, maybe
then it would say Kansas City and maybe Philly.
Maybe they're not in the 2 or 3. But I think it's reasonable to say, like, I can't get down to 2 or 3 teams and say, I feel with some level of certainty, the champion is going to be one of these 2 or 3 teams. I'd have to cast a little bit wider of a net and get to 6. And I think at 6, I feel pretty confident.
But that's not really a front runner, though. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think they have a chance, but I don't think it's their.
I think they're 7-2. You act like this is a
but a front runner is somebody that you think is in the lead to win the Super Bowl. That's what I'm saying. That's what
they are second in their conference.
It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
That's a good. Long story short,
the Lions are a good team. I just don't think they're a front runner.
Long story short, I don't think Dan Campbell is leaving a very good Lions team with a bunch of young talent to go coach college.
I agree.
I don't see that happening.
I agree. I think the Lions, they obviously were really bad 2-3 years ago. They built them into a division-winning type team.
If I'm Texas A&M, there is rumors that Chip Kelly is getting fired from UCLA. That's probably who I look at.
I like that. I like that.
I think Chip Kelly is a proven winner. I think UCLA is prematurely firing him. And I think if you give him the resources that Texas A&M has, just like he had ridiculous resources at Oregon, I think he turns Texas A&M into a winner. The UCLA, he took UCLA from a 3-win team to a 9, from a 3-win team to a 9-win team. It wasn't going to happen overnight. I think if you give him the resources that Texas A&M has, Chip Kelly is my person. That would be my front runner for that job.
What about Cliff Kingsbury?
The problem is I don't really think you saw it at that level with Cliff Kingsbury, both at Arizona with the Cardinals.
Well, NFL is different. NFL is different. But even in college, he was decent.
I don't think he was but he was decent, but he's not. He has no championships. He has no conference championships. He was never in the playoffs. I mean, Texas Tech was good, but they were not. That's not.
You know,
what I think Texas A&M is going to do is they want to make a splash.
If A&M really wants to make noise, they'd go get Urban.
So I'm going to say this. In my lifetime, and I'm going to go
that's probably the best coach you can go get right now.
In my college football lifetime, Urban Meyer is the second greatest college football coach that I've seen. I think if you give him Texas A&M's resources, he will turn that team into a winner. The problem with Urban is, one, we know the health issues. 2, Urban plays in the gray. Not to say, not now. The reason I think Urban may be interested is because I think Urban doesn't want to go out with that Jacksonville situation, his last coaching situation. If I'm Texas A&M, I don't think this is a guy that I can count on for 10 years.
I agree with that.
So if this is my only concern with that is that I know that I'd be bringing him in for 3 to 5 years, if that.
What if we went and got North Carolina's coach, Mac Brown?
Mac Brown's like 90 years old.
I don't know his contract situation, but
so the other problem with Mac Brown is that he is a North Carolina alum. Like he's a like that's true. His school. That's almost like why I don't think Jim Harbaugh would leave Michigan. I think Jim Harbaugh would only leave Michigan. What do we got all wrong, Greg? I think the only way Jim Harbaugh is leaving Michigan is for the NFL. Butch Jones or Pruitt, I can see both of those. I just don't think I'm not giving Butch Jones or Jeremy Pruitt $10 million a year. Not to say they're not.
Wait, but I also think Texas A&M is not going to make the same mistake they made last time.
I mean, and maybe
so pay a coach that much.
So now again, if you said, hey, I want an up and comer, I think that's where those names come in. I think then you throw in a Cliff Kingsbury. I think you throw in some other names. The question is, does Texas A&M want a proven winner, or are they willing to take the lumps with a young coach?
He was joking, I guess. But that's going to wrap it up. Obviously, about an hour in, we are going to be going live again on Sunday, recapping this week's college football slate. Hopefully there's some upsets. Please do us a favor, hit that notification bell so you guys know immediately when we go live. Bring a friend next time around. I think we're at like 951 subscribers.
And stay positive like Magic Johnson, baby. Stay positive like my man, Urban Magic Johnson.
You need help. But again, like I said, we're going to go live on Sunday. Hopefully see you guys all there. We'll be talking in the Discord as well. All right, bro, just ended already. Yeah, we need to end this. But we will see you guys then. Thank you guys so much for sticking around. Edgar said, ain't no way.